you know that the Soviet Union had its own video game console? A system so rare that only 200 units were ever made, and most people never even knew it existed. But why was it created? Why did it disappear? And could it have been the Soviet Union's answer to Nintendo? This is the forgotten story of the Krokha. In the 1980s, video game consoles were taking over the world. Nintendo and Sega were battling for dominance, and the gaming industry was booming. But in the Soviet Union, things were different. Due to strict government control, Western consoles like the Atari 2600 and the NES were either unavailable or prohibitively expensive. Most Soviet citizens had never even seen a home console in action. The lack of access to gaming in the Soviet Union wasn't just about economics. It was also ideological. The government viewed video games as a capitalist luxury, something unnecessary in a socialist society. Yet behind the scenes, there were Soviet engineers and programmers who were fascinated by this new technology and wanted to bring it to life within the USSR's constraints. But as the Iron Curtain started to lift, Soviet engineers began looking at ways to bring video games to the people. Enter SKB Kontur, a little-known Soviet design bureau with a mission: create the first homegrown Soviet gaming console, and thus Krokha was born. The Krokha, which translates to tiny in Russian, was an ambitious attempt at making a Soviet home console. It was developed by SKB Kontur and manufactured in limited numbers at the Technosvyaz plant. The goal? To create a machine that could rival Western consoles, but at a fraction of the cost. SKB Contour was not originally a gaming-focused company. It was a special design bureau known for developing electronics and computing systems for industrial and military applications. During the late 1980s, as the Soviet Union began experimenting with consumer electronics, SKB Contour took an interest in home entertainment. The idea was to create a simple, affordable gaming system that could be mass-produced domestically. While Western companies had dedicated gaming divisions, SKB Contour had to adapt engineers from other fields. Many of the team members working on the Krokha had backgrounds in radio engineering, telecommunications, and industrial computing rather than gaming hardware. This unique team dynamic meant that the Krokha was designed with a pragmatic function-over-form approach. Despite their expertise in electronics, developing a gaming console was uncharted territory for SKB Contour. There were no precedents for home gaming hardware in the USSR, meaning that they had to rely on reverse engineering existing Western technology and adapting it with Soviet-made components. However, there was a problem. Technology in the Soviet Union was lagging behind. While the rest of the world was enjoying colorful 8-bit graphics and smooth gameplay, the Krokha was running on a K580 VM80A processor, a Soviet copy of Intel's 8080 chip, which was already outdated by the time Krokha was developed. It had only 2 kilobytes of RAM, with 1.5 kilobytes dedicated to video memory, and a monochrome text-based display with a resolution of 48 by 32 characters. Compared to other consoles of its time, such as the Nintendo Entertainment System or the Sega Master System, the Krokha was significantly weaker in both hardware and graphical capabilities. The NES, for example, had a Ryko 2A03 processor, running at 1.79 MHz, 2 kilobytes of RAM, and could display 52 colors on screen, while the Sega Master System boasted 8 kilobytes of RAM and a Zilog Z80 processor running at 3.58 MHz. Both consoles featured smooth-scrolling, sprite-based graphics and extensive game libraries. In contrast, the Krokha's monochrome, text-based graphics, and limited processing power made it feel like an early computing experiment rather than a competitive home console. Beyond the technical limitations, there were logistical problems as well. Electronic components were difficult to source due to trade restrictions, and many of the parts used in the Krokha had to be repurposed from other Soviet technology, including telecommunications hardware and even military equipment. The lack of resources meant that the console was built using a patchwork of materials, many of which were originally designed for industrial or military use. The controllers were basic and lacked the ergonomic design of Western competitors, making gameplay less comfortable. Despite these challenges, the engineers at SKB Contour were determined to make it work. Unlike the NES or Sega Master System, which had extensive game libraries, the Krokha only had one cartridge, which contained 5 built-in games: Wall, a breakout-style game where players bounced a ball to destroy a wall of bricks. Tetris, the classic puzzle game, simplified for the Krokha's limited hardware. Caterpillar, a game similar to Snake, where the player controls a growing caterpillar. Balls, a mysterious ball-based game, though little documentation exists on how it played. Air Defense, a military-themed air defense game where players had to shoot down enemy planes. The developers had to work within extreme limitations. With no official development tools or widely available gaming standards, the games were programmed manually, and much of the coding was done on outdated Soviet computers. Despite these setbacks, they managed to create a playable selection of titles that showcased different types of gameplay. However, with only one cartridge, the replay value was limited. Unlike Western consoles, where new games could be purchased, Krokha users were stuck with the same 5 games indefinitely. Despite its potential, the Krokha never made it to store shelves. Only around 200 units were ever made, and instead of being mass-produced, they were distributed among employees of the Technosviaz plant and SKB Kontur. There were several reasons why the Krokha failed. Technological limitations. By the time Krokha was developed, it was already outdated compared to the NES, which had color graphics, superior sound, and a vast game library. Economic collapse. The Soviet Union was on the brink of collapse, and by 1991, funding for projects like Krokha dried up. Rise of the Dendy. Around the same time, the Dendy, a Russian Famicom clone, entered the market. It was far superior, supported hundreds of games, and quickly became the dominant gaming system in post-Soviet Russia. Lack of support. Without government funding or a dedicated gaming industry, Krokha was left to struggle on its own. There were no additional games, no expansions, and no real marketing to support it. With these obstacles, the Krokha was doomed before it even had a chance to compete. Today, the Krokha is one of the rarest video game consoles in the world. With only a few known surviving units, it has become a highly sought-after collector's item, often fetching high prices among gaming historians and enthusiasts. Many of these surviving units are found in private collections or retro gaming museums, making them inaccessible to the general public. Some enthusiasts have even attempted to create replicas or restore damaged units, further driving up interest in this rare piece of gaming history. The Krokha is now recognized as a unique artifact that represents the USSR's brief foray into the world of gaming, capturing a moment in time when Soviet engineers tried to compete in an industry dominated by the West. The Krokha remains a fascinating piece of gaming history, an ambitious yet flawed attempt to bring home gaming to Soviet citizens. While it never had the chance to succeed, its rarity and historical significance make it an intriguing relic of a bygone era. What do you think about the Krokha? Have you ever heard of it before? Or do you think it could have competed with Western consoles if given the chance? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into gaming history, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future episodes covering forgotten and obscure gaming consoles. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.